Hey guys, welcome to 2A for Today. I regret to inform you guys that this will be the last video version of 2A for Today. But look out for our radio program. We've got a new radio program coming out very soon. By the end of this month, I think you guys will enjoy it. We partner with a bunch of other major firearm manufacturers and people who do commentary and law related to our Second Amendment rights, our God-given right to keep and bear arms. So anyway, this is Zoe Warren, and on today's episode of 2A for Today, we're going to be talking about the Verburg family crisis. And I have with me on the line an expert in the weaponization of labels in government. He wrote a paper in 2019 outlining how, we, conservative, patriotic Americans, can become enemies of the state without knowing it, domestic terrorists unwittingly. And that paper's found its way all the way to Congress. The Weaponization Subcommittee is the fruit of the work that he's done. And so we're going to talk to Mark Hur today from Center for Self-Governance about the weaponization of labels in government and how the domestic violence courts at a local county, state level are looking very similar to the FBI, DNI partnered with, the Department of Homeland Security, how they've conflated these domestic terrorists and domestic violent extremist concept in order to produce a means by which to use government in a way to interdict people differently, to essentially violate or trespass their rights that are supposed to be protected by these officers, to be able to trespass their constitutionally protected rights while, preventing violence or countering extremism. And it looks like in the domestic violence courts locally, at the county level, state level, they're doing the same thing. It may have started there. I posit it started there, but Mark's going to be on the call with us today, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
They say I'm part of a global plan. I don't think so. It's too hot, it's too cold. You know what? The weather changes.
Here's the news, Dad.
Nope. It's hard to tell what's real and what's fake these days.
Ditch the fake news and always get the truth. Go to thenewamerican.com.
Mark, thanks for joining the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Zoe. Appreciate you very much.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you, bro. Hopefully I laid everything out pretty well in the intro, who you are, what you do. But if you could tell us just a little bit really quickly about Center for Self-Governance, what CSG does, and what you have given to us to help us stop the weaponization of labels in government.
CSG is a nonprofit. We are a national organization. Our goal is to teach anyone who wants to learn self-governance, to search for self-governance, to practice self-governance, to learn systematic politics, completely different from partisan politics, to practice systematic politics so that we can enjoy life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for ourselves, our kids, our communities, our states, and our nation. I discovered the weaponization of labels in government basically back in 2010. My congressman, Steve Cohen, in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, I'm in Washington State now, as you can see, he basically called me a white supremacist on Young Turks Radio in April of 2010. Not by name, but the Tea Party movement itself. And I was like, I wasn't even born in America. I was raised in probably one of the most racist countries on earth because my dad was in the military. I was like, it was just mind blowing. What just happened to me? I just got labeled a white supremacist and I didn't know what to do. Like, my natural instinct was defend myself, go fight. And so I called for a press conference. I did all this stuff and nothing mattered. No matter what I said, I was a white supremacist because I kind of felt like a Quaker being burned at the stake in the Salem witch trials. No matter what I said, I'm a heretic and a witch. You know what I mean? And so from that point forward, I began to research, where's this coming from? I'm not a white supremacist. I know myself. And so I just research-wise, I'm going down this rabbit hole of self-governance, systematic politics, what is our system of government? And then this white supremacy thing, it's like no matter what I said, I couldn't have a civil conversation with anybody about our system of government and self-government. It was like some kind of barrier. And I just wanted to break it down, like defend myself somehow. But I found that was a waste of time, defending myself. It turns out that this was a purposeful weaponization of our government by people who believe that people like Zoe Warren and you, the listener, myself, that we're just charlatans, incompetent laymen who just are selfish, and we don't know anything about our government, and there's better people qualified to do that, and we should just be quiet and go home and not have these conversations. And I was like, okay, I'm being labeled a white supremacist, not because I am one. I'm being labeled a white supremacist because they're trying to prevent me from having a voice. And so the weaponization of the label then led to the weaponization of government. Eventually, I found myself in a lawsuit against my government with the IRS. They wanted our donor lists. They wanted to know all our meetings, who came, all of our minutes, and all this stuff, Zoe. And I was like, no, that's not right. I got my tax exempt status because I was doing charity work to study our government and self-government. But I got labeled a white supremacist, and it turned into the weaponization of the IRS. And I was like, okay, this is a really serious problem, because if the IRS could come after me just for a tax status, certainly the FBI could come after me for surveillance, break down my doors, shoot me and my kids, and do really crazy stuff if the label had authority within their ranks. That became seriously concerning to me. And so I've been studying the weaponization of labels in government for 14 years. My goal is to try to stop it so I can get back to studying self-governance and teaching people and having discussions in classrooms. What is it and how do we do it? And what is our system? And how can Zoe and I work together in the audience and the community, make our system work better so we're not always having to fight for our Second Amendment rights all the time?
He didn't jump into this thing to try to do a witch hunt, you know, really just trying to understand what's happening to you. It wasn't like you were even going to try to get, you know, justice from, you know, the courts on individuals who did something to you, but it was a systemic thing that was taking place.
It was seriously concerning to me. Like, first of all, I know me, I'm not a white supremacist. Number two, I followed the law. I mean, our little Tea Party group, we submitted our papers and we did all this stuff. And next thing you know, we're being targeted as though we were criminals or doing something wrong. And I was like, it was based on the label. And now the IRS became a weapon. And I became very concerned, not just for myself, but for you guys and American people. Like, I served in my military career in Tokyo, Japan. I studied Russia and North Korea. And that's the kind of stuff that happens in those countries. I didn't know that was happening here. And I'm a retired military guy. I'm so non-confrontational. I just want to live in peace and listen to birds chirp, you know? And
what you were feeling, what you were experiencing, the systemic thing that was had you essentially in the grinder. You were going through a process of gears and a tunnel, a funnel. For whatever reason, you didn't understand what that was. But yeah, it's happening, and it has been happening to Americans at different levels. It happened to Black Americans at one point in time in our history.
Yep.
It's happening now in the domestic violence courts. I mean, if you get accused of rape, you're going to jail, right? Whether you did it or not. If you get accused of rape, they're going to take you, handcuff you, take you down, book you, right? And then you're going to have to get a day in front of the court judge so that you can get out and you get what do they call it? A bond.
Bail. So, yeah.
You have to get out of jail and have to give some amount of money to make sure that you come back to court. And
it's like a Monopoly game.
Right. So do not pass go. Do not collect anything. Go to
straight to jail.
That's right. But the key here is Brian Verburg, this gentleman out in Leesville, South Carolina. He's been experiencing some of that weaponization. He found a label put on him, and because that label was put on him, they were able to treat him a certain way. Like, essentially, he and his family began to have a falling out. Him and his wife were not able to communicate anymore, and because of that, she began to use what seemingly appears to be law enforcement to try to enact her will. Like, for instance, one night, I have it on record here, they were sleeping, and he had come home to stay the night because he wasn't even staying at his home anymore because of the tension. And when he came home that night, he stayed the night because his son really wanted him to be there. He was having some trouble with apnea or something like that, where he wasn't breathing while he was sleeping, so his son was concerned.
My father was stopping breathing in his sleep. He had some airflow issues with his nose from an injury when he was younger. So it was hard for him to get oxygen through while he was sleeping. So he was having issues where one night I was staying with him and he woke up out of a dead sleep gasping for air. And that scared me. So I begged him, like he said, to come home and stay at our house with us for that reason, and for the reason that I just wanted to feel, you know, the normalcy of having my parents together in the home.
So he goes home, and his wife actually calls law enforcement to try to get him removed from the house.
We were woken up from a dead sleep and told that I was to leave my residence, that the cops were on the way to remove me from my own home. And I said, for what? Sleeping? Like, what is going on? I was totally confused, like, you know, out of a dead sleep. And my ex started jumping in front of me, waving her arms, yelling, hit me, in front of the kids.
I woke up about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning to the sound of just commotion. My mother speaking pretty loudly. I walk out into the, you know, kind of common ground of the house, the living area, and I see my mother and my father standing, you know, face to face. My mother is yelling in his face, demanding him to hit her. My father at that point told her he's never hit her the entire time that they were together, my entire life. Why would I start now, is what my father said.
Young Max, I think he was maybe 8 or 9 at the time, stepped in front of me and got his mother a distance and said, you're not doing this to my dad anymore. And Cole also stepped in between, and they asked her to tell the cops the truth, that we were sleeping. And she went outside and talked to the cops, and she left.
Nothing happens on that instant. However, she files for divorce. So 3 months, she's not even taking care of her children anymore. Brian is. She files for divorce, and she brings papers for him to sign. He doesn't feel comfortable signing them. They're at a restaurant. And because he doesn't feel comfortable signing them, he wants to be able to read through these papers. He's going to take them with him and have a lawyer look over them. She doesn't want him to take the papers.
I came across some language that I was very disturbed by. So I said, you know, I would feel a lot more comfortable, because she wanted me to sign all this paperwork and just hand it back over to her with no copies or anything. At which time I said, you know, I feel very uncomfortable with a lot of the language in here. I'd like to have a professional look over it before, you know, I just sign something and give it back with no copies. She started getting loud in the restaurant, and I just said, hey, I'm not doing this. And I got up with the paperwork to leave. She attacked me all the way from the table, all the way to the automobile that I had driven there. I had my arms up in the air, spinning around, just simply trying to retreat and leave, just trying to get back to my children, who I'd been raising for about 3 months on my own, while working full-time selling cars too.
She accuses him of grabbing her and throwing her to the ground. She gives testimony to that effect.
9 days went by, and I come home. I was working on the Porsche Subaru lot at McDaniel's out on Killian Road. Came home and was getting ready to make my children dinner, and I heard someone screaming at them in the front yard. They were playing baseball, Cole Max and Cole's best friend, when I pulled up. And I went out to see what was going on and was arrested in front of my children.
There's video of that. Were you able to get that video?
I actually was told by my lawyer at the time to go straight there when I got out of jail, which I obviously did. When I arrived at Don Pepe's...
Paparoni's is where y'all ended up.
I'm sorry, yeah, Paparoni's, I'm sorry. When I arrived at Paparoni's, I spoke to the employee that was at the counter. He was very nice, but he said that the officer said that they were not allowed to give me the tape, that I would have to get it through discovery. That they commanded, Lexington County Sheriff's Department commanded Paparoni's to not release the video evidence to me that proved my good name.
Okay, Okay, and that was, what was the charge on that? That was domestic violence. I know it was 3rd degree, but what particular thing did they say you did?
She tried to claim that I put hands on her, which in the video, I had my arms up, spinning around while she physically attacked me.
And they charge him with domestic violence, 3rd degree. And so he has to go through an entire year as a domestic violent felon. They called him a felon too. So now
But was he convicted?
He was not charged.
So he's charged, but they've labeled him a domestic violent felon, not a domestic violent like accused.
You're right. And
Okay.
because in the domestic violence courts, I guess they're trying to counter violent extremism, so to speak. They don't want this man who has a family and a wife to potentially be a domestic violent abuser. And so because there's a doctrine you were talking about yesterday that facilitates this. What is that doctrine called again?
Yes. This is a legal doctrine where the courts would say it's not so much whether they have video proof or testimony, it's whether or not the person has opportunity and access. This would be like true like with a father and a daughter, and the daughter says, "Daddy touched me inappropriately." Okay, they don't have to have the video proof or a witness. It's the matter of the father had opportunity, the father had access.
Okay, they charge you with domestic violence. The miss filed it as a felony, August 2019 all the way to February 2020. That entire period, everybody, law enforcement, anybody who can look up your background, they are looking at you as if though you're a felon. What is that? How does that feel? What is it like?
I mean, it makes you look bad to anyone and everyone that can look up anything about you. The worst part of it was they used it to not let me talk to my kids all that time. They made it a criminal act for me to even be a father. So not only am I, it's hard to get employment when you have been made to look like a felon. They've strategically used it to keep me from being a father too. So basically it felt like they were trying to get me just to crawl in a hole and die. Just go away.
This gentleman, he gets, jailed. He becomes a domestic violent felon. For an entire year, she's able to take her kids. So she essentially was not caring for them for 3 months. She's able to cause this incident to happen. He gets arrested, so she's able to take the kids. And so she has the kids for a year. And he's essentially fighting for his freedom. They're able to ruin his position at his job because he's been labeled something. So this weaponization of labels can affect even your job before you're convicted, just because you're accused.
Just because you're accused, yes. That's such a critical point here. The labeling, especially through history. When you look back in history about using labels, Catholics did it to Protestants, Protestants to Puritans, Puritans to Quakers. Our country has had the shame of doing that to other minority groups in this country. And now it's happening in this way, whether it's political or it's familial like this. The label can cause so much damage to your reputation, to your job prospects, your ability to move, to act, to talk, to have influence. So it's almost like you're guilty until you prove your innocence. It's like a reversal of the doctrine of guilty until innocent until proven guilty.
And the cops actually wrote in their report how fond my children were of me. They wrote how cooperative I was. Just trying to do the right thing, just trying to be a dad. Unfortunately, they called and let her come pick up my kids that she had just abandoned for 3 months. So I guess that was the strategy of getting me arrested in the first place, was to come and rob me of what I love the most in the whole world, my kids.
Turns out that first incident, the domestic violence felony 3rd degree thing, he says, this is his testimony, that there is actual footage on the cameras from the restaurant.
So yeah, Nicole Hallen sat with my attorney at the time, and they watched the video together, at which time Miss Nicole Hallen said, "This man should have never been arrested. This is ridiculous. He did textbook what we tell people they should have done. I had my arms in the air. I was simply retreating, trying to leave, and they threw it out and expunged it and everything.
Interesting.
But now he's got this history with the police. He's lost his kids for a period. This label is on him for the year. He's not guilty. The case is dismissed. There's an order written by a judge to completely expunge the record, right? Because he was found not guilty. I mean, it makes it very clear that he is not guilty. Get rid of this charge, right? And so, however, later on, that charge is used against him in order to try to counter extremism or violent extremism, which is similar to what we see our federal government doing, which is similar to what we saw with the Bureau of Land Management. If they think you're guilty, then they can use the process to punish you. They may even violate the law because they're trying to prove that you're guilty. And then the consequence of that is they might have to continue breaking the law to cover their tracks, right? Similar to the Weaponization saga, where he's labeled a domestic terrorist, right? They put a threat tag on him, but he's not. He's not a domestic terrorist. And because of that threat tag, they're able to essentially weaponize the Oregon State Police. He gets shot at 6 times while he's in the vehicle. Before he even gets out of the vehicle, he's shot at 6 times, and he gets shot in the back 3 times. And then you find the FBI having to cover their tracks now. And they're walking around picking up shells out of the snow. Talk to me a little bit about that how the FBI and our federal agencies are doing some similar things. And once the law is kind of broken in this way, because they're trying to prove that this person's what they think they are, that they now begin to cover their tracks.
A great case in point here is like the Veterans Administration. When a veteran has a stroke under the Obama administration, the doctor became the judge and the jury and say, well, we need to issue an order to take away their guns because they might be a threat. And so back in 2015, there was this veteran who had a stroke, and the doctor ordered to have his guns taken. So the VA was going to send people there to actually confiscate his guns. Well, his representative, he was like calling his, wait a minute, I had a stroke, but I'm not incapable of controlling myself. And so his representative and people came, and the sheriff said, we're not going to do this. And the media labeled this a domestic terrorist event, where people came to support this veteran, saying, don't take away his guns. Stop. And it's in Priest River, Idaho, by the way. And the results is that the VA said, we're not going to do this. We're going to back down. But the media labeled this a domestic violent extremist, domestic terrorist threat. And the event became this a calling sign for the media and for pundits who are trying to make political change, to make the case that, see, we really need to strengthen the FBI's relationship with sheriffs and state organizations, because these kinds of threats, they don't know any better. This veteran was a threat to himself. The expert said, take away the gun. There should have been no interference, and they should have been able to come in and take away the guns. So FBI down to local governments, law enforcement, like the case you're describing, it just starts with the label. Then it transitions to the expert. In this case would be a bureaucrat in the administrative state of whatever level of government we're talking. And the legislative body then is weak, because you go to your representative. What options do you have? You show up to protest and say, don't take away the guy's guns. Don't do that. But then the media enters the fray and says, no, that's a violence. That's domestic violence. That's the threat. That's terrorism. That's crime. And so they start crafting new policies and weaponizing other parts of the FBI, like in the Lavoie case. They say that he was reaching for a gun. But I talked to the widow this morning, and because the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, just released a report saying that the FBI has not been forthcoming in the information regarding that case. There's video footage. They show them picking up stuff, but then they were able to allegedly hide what they were doing by saying, well, we were picking up sensitive things. Well, they only found 2 shell casings, but there were a total of 8 shots fired. So where are the other 6 shell casings? But because there's no remedy for people like us, or the individual that you're talking about now, or the widow in this case. The Lavoie is dead, so he can't defend himself. But the widow, it kind of exasperated. Like, I don't know what else to do. I invited her to go with me to DC in October or November to talk with the weaponization committee because of that OIG report and what are the next steps. And she's just kind of like, is it worth my time? What's it going to accomplish? They're not listening. And that's literally because of what we're talking about. The source starts with the label, then the administrative state is weaponized, and then the average person doesn't have a remedy with which to solve that piece of the pie.
You had another incident with a girlfriend. Tell me a little about your relationship with Vanessa Barnes.
So Vanessa and I met, we quickly became best friends. We dated for a while, and then we decided that we were gonna get married. Vanessa and I, the night in question, we had moved all of her stuff from Georgia to my residence for 2 straight days with barely any sleep. It came up basically just a verbal disagreement that we were talking about. She decided that she was going to leave and go to her mother's, and I just at that point said, you know, that's fine, but we're just going to split at that point. You know, I'm not going to play these games. I've been through a bad divorce already. You know, I wish her well and stuff, but I wasn't going to, you know, to do all that. And at which point she left. She left her phone, unfortunately, at my residence. So I guess when she got down to the highway, she decided to pull in. You know, obviously she was mad at me. I was upset with her. It was verbal, completely verbal. She called the police. Whatever happened, it was probably 1 or 1:30 in the morning. I was dead asleep in my bed, and it was around 4:30 in the morning. I was woke up with like 12 automatic weapons pointed at my head in my own home, in my own bed. They really didn't tell me anything. Lexington County Sheriff's Department, they don't read your Miranda rights. They don't tell you what they're arresting you for, at least in my case. They bully and, you know, point 12 automatic weapons at your head and you're in a dead sleep, and then just kidnap you and take you away with no explanation. I found out the next day in court that apparently they had charged me with kidnapping and some kind of domestic violence, which I'm not a kidnapper. I'm not a violent person by nature in any way.
And what she says happened on the night that she calls the police. And then later on, she writes a victim impact statement, which is completely different. In her victim impact statement, she says, he never laid his hands on me. He never hit me. He never touched me. He never pushed me, right? But the night of the incident, the police say that he grabbed her, tossed her against a shelf, and then took her phone from her so she couldn't call the police. The incident where he gets jailed happens at the end of January 26th. She writes her victim impact statement March 21st of 2021. And in that impact statement is where I told you how she said, he never laid hands on me, he never hit me, he was always kind to me and loving to me. I mean, it was like a praise report, the whole thing. How good a dad he is, how well he treated her. And it must have been because we had worked so late that they had a falling out, and she left her phone there.
She actually wrote a statement saying what a wonderful father that I was and all this stuff that it kind of brought me to tears. You know, it said a lot of good things about me and our relationship and everything. But unfortunately, Lexington County, they buried that evidence for like almost a year to keep these charges on me.
It was written in March. So that means there is exculpatory evidence that could be used by your defense attorneys as a motion to dismiss the case.
Correct.
Because it speaks to your intent, and she's clearly saying you did not put hands on her in this victim impact statement.
Right.
So the incident happens January 2021. The victim impact statement is written in March of 2021. His lawyer doesn't receive that information until July of 2021. July 27th, almost the end of July, almost August. And so that's when the case is dismissed, later in November.
Felony charge. Dismissed. Prosecutorial discretion. So they decided not to take you to court. Probably because they wouldn't have won the case, right?
So here we are again, another entire year of him being charged as a felon for something that he's not. So like you were saying, I know I'm not that. I'm telling people I'm not that. I didn't do that. But who's listening? No one.
Yeah, the label and the charge. So the label and the administration, the executive branch combined together, A plus B equals an outcome. And we have a tension between guilty until proven innocent, innocent until proven guilty. The nation started on innocent until proven guilty. We've been shifting to guilty until proven innocent. And there's a major reason for that. And it's tied to this idea that our system of government is considered racist. There's a term for it. It's called racial capitalist system, or white body supremacy. And it's this idea that males, whether they're black or white or whatever, in a patriarchy type of environment, somehow get the benefit of the doubt, while the woman and the child suffer, or the minority suffers under the hands of whatever that oppressive patriarch is. And so I believe a lot of this stems from that belief that our system of government needs to transition from innocent until proven guilty to guilty until proven innocent. And this is such an example of that, where the administrative state relies on a label, then they create a series of data points, and then they're able to say, see, we're able to prove it. Like, see, we have 2,000 people from January 6th. Lavoy Finicum, see, we had this guy who's reaching for a gun. See, Donald Trump, he's a white nationalist in a corporatist clothing. See, and so the data points become the proof that they use to continue to empower the administrative state to make the case that this guy's life needs to be destroyed. I mean, maybe he does have a violent problem. I don't know. It's two women involved, right? The former wife and then the girlfriend. Maybe he does have it. But why should the system be weaponized that way, to take that much of life, to destroy those kids' relationships? You know what I mean? The only thing I can trace it back to, Zoe, is this white body supremacy idea, or racial capitalist system that somehow is genetically programmed in the United States system. And so they're willing to make people use the administrative state and labels to make people look like they're guilty, and then they have to spend the rest of their lives proving they're not.
They're still holding bogus charges over my head to make me look like a bad person and defame my character, that they themselves have agreed they're bogus. They threw them out. It's not even, but for some reason on the record, they're still continuing to make me look like a bad person and discredit me.
A felony.
A felon.
You look like a felon. And your defense attorneys, your public defender, didn't have that removed? They didn't file any motions with the clerk, to get that expunged from your record?
Apparently not.
Now, did they take your firearms when they charged you with the felony domestic violence first degree kidnapping?
No.
I think it's terrible, personally. I get it where they're coming from, but dang, man, it's no different than the Catholics, the Protestants, the Puritans, and what they did. It just happens to be in the United States in the 21st century. It's not cool.
It's important to understand the environment with which people are making decisions, because then it helps you to separate the people who are doing it from the philosophy that's caused us fueling it, because survival and all these things are going on in their mind, whatever that is going on inside of them that causes them to act a certain way. I mean, it's really important. It helps you be compassionate. It helps you really fully communicate with people. I see your issue. I understand what you're dealing with, and when you're able to communicate it to them, then they can recognize and see themselves. without feeling condemned, So like what you're saying, I think a lot of folks who may even be in the system, rank and file folks, are probably being used because they're not the apparatchiks. The people up the line created this thing and they put it in motion, and the rank and file are just going through the motions because this is what they're taught how it's supposed to work.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Many of the bureaucrats it's their job. They're serving their community. They're trying to do the right thing. And then the rulemaking procedure, the system itself that they're entering into and they're applying it causes these consequences. And it's really important that we're able to capture this data, but also to articulate our ideas and how to fix it. Not just to fight so-called bureaucrats and crash a system that actually was designed quite well, to be honest. I'm a former aircraft mechanic, and I can tell you the system of government of the United States is very well designed compared to the other 190 countries and previous systems throughout history. It's a very, very well-built system. However, we have people from history, especially during FDR back in the World War II timeframe, their ideas about our system and how to change it and how to do so like this, they're dead, but their structural changes are causing these symptoms, like Lavoie case, J6 people, this gentleman that you're talking about, in other cases. You can imagine, I'm sure your listeners are like thinking of different kinds of cases. Oh yeah, oh my God. It's imperative to understand that those symptoms are coming from a system that is being modified. Not because there are bad bureaucrats. Maybe there are a few, but there's a lot of bureaucrats who are in this system because they want to do good for their community. It's imperative that we're able to see past that to the system and figure out together how we fix it so that it doesn't happen to the gentleman that you're talking about, the widow of Lavoie, and so many more people.
His case is a little different too because we're talking about a family, right? And things happen in families. These things happen. So like, for instance, after the first domestic violence, third degree felony that he essentially gets found not guilty, his son ends up in his care. He gets his kids back, but the youngest son, Max, ends up getting burned. A grill fell on him, right? While they were cooking. They were having a good time. It wasn't like anything bad happened. The other son was there. Well, the father did not perceive the burns to be that severe, and that was their dinner, so they decided they'd go get something to eat first, right? Well, when the mom gets wind of that, it becomes a really big deal, and she takes him to the hospital. He gets skin grafts, all kinds of stuff done to him, right? Now, granted, it may have been bad. Sometimes you can't tell on presentation how bad something is, but that became, I think, maybe also fuel for law enforcement, for the solicitor's office, for the judges to think there's something wrong with this guy. He's not thinking correctly. Yellow flag, red flag type behavior, right? So before they take his firearms, they're looking at him like this guy may be gaslighting us. He may not be innocent, even though he was found not guilty of this other crime.
The question is, are they using these records of the violence of yours to justify the family court actions against you?
Well, yeah, I had no police record at all in my whole life until my divorce started.
People can be worn down by this process. I mean, their whole lives are destroyed.
They've kept my children from seeing and talking to each other for over 3 years now, which makes no sense. I mean, I could see them being able to take a child away from a father or something like that with the crooked family courts, but to take two brothers who are best friends in the world away from each other and not even allow them communication for over 3 years, it's despicable, it's disgusting.
It was hard for him to make money. It was hard for him to keep a job. He was working for a landscape company because they essentially were able to disrupt his other employment situation, so he lost his job there. So when you're going through this process, you're actually creating bad people, potentially. I'm not saying Mr. Verburg's bad. However, there's
Desperate.
a video. People get desperate. They're tired. They're frustrated. They're like, Jeanette Finicum, what do I do? I have lost faith in the system. How can I trust this? And there's nothing wrong with the system itself, but it's been hijacked, it's been corrupted, and it's being used in a way that's illegal. But there's no remedy. Or it's legal. It's legal, but it's oppression.
But yeah, I came back, my firearms, everything was intact. But apparently on the next bogus charge, they felt like they should take my guns too and rob my home.
They have a vehicle driving by the house. You hear a voice cry out from the vehicle.
Hey man, I love you! Stop it!
He's not able to see his son. And so he's trying to see his son. So he'll drive by to see if he can catch a glimpse of his son outside playing. Just driving by, right? They say they have another video of him too. They claim that he pulls up in the Volvo, the son and a young boy are out playing. They claim that he gets out of the vehicle and walks towards the son, who he's not supposed to have any contact with. The son runs off. But in the video that I have, nobody gets out of the vehicle. A ball that they're playing with goes and rolls into the road. And the car stops because there's a ball on the road and two kids playing. And so the kids see the vehicle. I think Max thinks it's his dad and he runs off. Because of that, they go to get harassment charges placed upon the father. They're now going to interdict him. So they go to his house. At the time, he's working at a landscape company.
Oh yeah, and they were told exactly where to find me. They made it a point to go to my job and tell them that I was armed and dangerous, which I wasn't. And I actually have a video from my boss on my telephone of them driving through there that day. So they knew and were informed, but they didn't want to talk to me there because there were other people around. They wanted to come and attack me in my sleep. I believe their intention was to try to suicide by cop me.
So they show up at his house. They're, on the thing, on the megaphone, come out of the house with your hands up, yada, yada, yada. He claims he's inside sleeping. He doesn't hear any of it. Because he doesn't answer the door, because he doesn't come to the door and whatever, they end up getting an order to be able to break into his home with SWAT teams because they say he's barricaded in his home and he's got firearms, so he's dangerous.
They ruined my home. They caved in my porch. They broke my front door down, my back door down. They shot my windows out with tear gas. My dog, I thought he was the toughest dog in the world. He was shivering on top of me, scared to death. He's still not the same. Even my dog is traumatized from all this.
Read the charge for me on the sheet.
April 7th, 2023. Harassment, 2nd degree. It's a misdemeanor. So is that what we do for misdemeanors that are alleged? You break someone's windows out and shoot tear gas into their home? And they threatened to shoot me on my back porch because I asked to get shoes on. They wanted me to walk through my backyard where they had like a mock tank thing that they fired tear gas from and demanded me to walk barefoot through my backyard.
They flashbanged your living room and tear gassed it.
Oh yeah. It's like an act of terrorism. If you've ever been through something like that, I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
For harassment, 2nd degree.
No, they took my guns too. So I have no right to bear arms now it's been almost a year and 4 months, I believe. April 7th, I asked for my right to a speedy trial by a jury of my peers. And they said, no, we're gonna put it through the DV court. I said, this is not a domestic violence charge. And I demand my right to a speedy trial by a jury of my peers. And here we are. I wore an ankle monitor for this for almost a year. They're still dragging it out. There's another continuance. We were supposed to have a court date the 20th, which they made sure to summons Cole and make sure that it arrived on his graduation day. it just keeps drawing out because now there's another continuance, and they just keep on because they know I didn't do anything, but they want to persecute me and continue to persecute me and deny me of not only my constitutional rights, but my basic God-given human rights of me and my children have been taken away. I've been charged with 3 bogus charges here in Lexington County, and not one time have they given me my right to a jury of my peers. And I've asked over and over. They've denied me over and over. They've denied me of my right to fatherhood. They've denied me to my right to bear arms. I can't even really pursue life, liberty, and happiness because every time I get back on my feet, it's another sucker punch from another direction. And it's like I just keep on moving forward and keep on doing the best I can do. And I'm being dragged backwards by people that don't even know me and my children. Like, it makes no sense that people are that money hungry that they violate people and treat people inhumanely.
So these are things that look to me like steps in a process by which you can abuse people. Because this guy who has done nothing, according to him, and obviously the judges, according to the woman who wrote the victim impact statement, according to the video from the very first incident, hasn't done those violent things to the people he's been accused. Even in the last video, they're saying he's doing things that aren't in the video.
To be honest, the last 5 years of my life is kind of jumbled together. Everything that's happened, I can't remember specific events in specific order. I feel as if I have memory loss due to, the stress and strain and anxiety that I've been facing.
This is, 3 or 4 years in the making. Now these officers know him. They really think he's guilty. He needs to be punished. Whatever we need to do with the process in order to make sure that this guy doesn't hurt anybody, we're going to do it, even if he's not guilty.
Outside of the court system, it's all in the administrative executive system. And they're able to bypass his representation and in effect to bypass the judicial branch.
I don't think a day has passed that in my chest I don't feel anxiety. At every moment of every day, I feel like my rights could be stripped from me. My father's rights could be stripped from him. I live with a constant feeling in my chest of what's going to happen next. What bad thing is going to be made to happen next by these people. And it's constant. It's stressful. It really weighs on me. It's a weight on my shoulders that is constant. It never goes away.
Even in the case of public defenders, they all work for the same government. They all get their checks signed by the same people, right? And so if they work together and they're not interested in having, justice happen as much as they kind of want to keep their job. And this guy, he looks like he may be violent. He let his son be burned and didn't take him to the hospital. And, another woman was involved. And, he got off a couple times. He's white, like you were saying. He's got a white body and he's got a white group of people. So he thinks he can just take advantage of people. So we're just going to use the process to punish him. Now, I'm not saying that's what they're thinking, but I'm alleging that that's the environment that he is living in. That's the potential of this systemic problem. How do you respond to those thoughts?
Yes, I think you're spot on. The culture, the system in place is not the system that was created when it comes to due process. And due process would be the gentleman you're describing is innocent until he's proven guilty. In this case, the administrative state has determined that he's guilty and he has to prove his innocence. And so they're able to use the executive branch in order to put him into a situation of 3 or 4 years of basically hell where his life is completely disrupted. And he'll carry this for the rest of his life. Unless he moves or goes to a different state or gets a new name, he'll have to carry that stigma. It's like the scarlet letter that the Puritans would give to the women in the Salem witch trials, right? They would carve names or make them wear hats and things. There's nothing new under the sun here when it comes to people who have control. They believe they're right. You give them control of society, then they're able to figure out how to navigate so that they can do things more efficiently. So the bureaucrats themselves, I don't think the lower level echelon bureaucrats, the ones who are out there at your door, are there to destroy your life. I think that they've been trained, they've been taught, this is their process, and they're carrying out the process. Yeah. Ultimately, the ideas for this process, where those come from, we have to shift the place from where the idea is germinated, that funnels its way down to that bureaucrat who knocks on your door. We got to get past the bureaucrat and go back to the source of these ideas and have our voices and our ideas at the table of change. The people who are coming up with this, though, these ideas, are not the ones knocking and breaking down your doors. They're not the ones carrying out the action. Like in Lavoy Finicum's case, the FBI agent who shot at him twice, Joseph Astorita. That Joseph Astorita is doing his job because it's a domestic terrorist national security event. Okay? And in his world, he's been trained. This is a really bad guy. But the ideas and the people coming up with the ideas are not Joseph Astorita. They're not the ones on the ground interacting with this individual, Brian, that you're describing, or Lavoy Finicum. We've got to go backwards into the system where the ideas are germinating, because those ideas trickle down to your front door. They trickle down to the flashbang in your living room. They trickle down into grabbing the guns out of your house. They trickle down to the clerk signing instead of the judge. It's a trickle down to our lives. And it's imperative. It's so imperative for our culture, and any culture for that matter, for human beings, that they learn the system, that they understand where the ideas are germinating, and that their voice together, that their voice has a way to make change. So this doesn't happen to other Brians in the future. This doesn't happen to other Lavoys. It doesn't happen to widows like Jeanette who lose faith in their system. Why should I go to DC? Fortunately, I was able to convince her. There's a reason why. There's still hope. There's always hope. There's always hope. Humans have, whether you feel like you are the person who is the most down, who has run out of energy, there's nothing more you can do. There is a spark in the human spirit that outlasts our exhaustion. And that hope, that human spirit, it doesn't stop. It doesn't. Even the worst tyranny of Germany murdering millions of Jews, Israelis still, and they're still struggling today, still trying to find a way. How do we survive? The human spirit is not easily broken. It's easily demoralized. But there's something in our spirit that seeks freedom, that looks for liberty and wants it, craves it. There is a weaponization of government committee at the federal level. Together, you and I have been planting seeds for over a year, and I'm going to see the sprout of that seed in September or October, and by January, Congress, there'll be a change, and we will be able to bring our ideas for criminal justice reform, due process ideas. Hey, how do we prevent this from happening to Bryans in the future, Lavoys in the future? A family, it's not just Lavoy, it's 60 grandkids, 12 kids, and a widow that were affected by that. And that's a lot of ripple effect going on 10, 30, 40 years from now. Jeanette told me today, she's like, I was really surprised to hear Lavoy's name in the media again. I says, you're going to continue to hear his name in the media, Jeanette, because people don't want to be treated this way. Like Brian, and hopefully Brian can see he doesn't have anything in common with Lavoy when it comes to cows. But he sure does have something in common to the weaponization of labels in government. And that is something that the American people can unite behind. It doesn't matter whether you're Brian or Lavoy. It matters that both of you realize you both experienced the weaponization of labels in government. It's time for you to join together to stop it.
Mark Herr, Center for Self-Governance, expert in political weaponization of labels in government. Thanks for coming on the show today.
I appreciate you, Zoe. Appreciate your community and what you're doing.
I'm honored, man. I'm honored to be your friend. I think I'm your friend. I'm honored to be your friend. I'm honored to be a workmate in this battle against forces that truly do not want us to have liberty. They want to just be in control. They're the rancher, we're the cattle. They want to just count us as heads.
We need AI to make us a little video of us just kind of roaming around eating grass. Then the ranchers show up, flashbang us. Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
That concludes our program for today. You've been watching 2A for Today. Again, this is the last episode that's 2A for Today on video. But we're going to have a radio program where we're going to have lots of personalities in the firearm industry that talk about law, that produce firearms themselves, and we're going to have a great time. So make sure you keep your eyes open for the coming 2A for Today radio show, and God bless you. And this is Zoe Warren signing off.